Hello dear learners, and welcome back to our channel where English learning becomes not just a lesson but an unforgettable adventure. Today, we begin the extraordinary life story of one of the most inspiring and courageous leaders the world has ever known, Nelson Mandela. This isn't just a history lesson, this is a journey through hope, resilience, and determination. As you listen, you'll improve your English vocabulary, pronunciation, and listening skills, while also discovering a powerful story that will motivate you to dream big and never give up. So, sit back, focus your mind, and open your heart because you're about to hear one of the most powerful and motivational stories of all time. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in a small village called Mvezo in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. His original name was Rolihlahla Mandela. In the Xhosa language, Rolihlahla means pulling the branch of a tree, but it is often interpreted to mean troublemaker. This name would later suit him well, as he grew up to challenge one of the most unjust systems in the world. Mandela came from the Dembu royal family, a respected clan of the Xhosa people. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakanyiswa, was a chief and advisor to the local king. His mother, Nosekeni Fanny, was a gentlewoman with strong values. Though they were not rich, the Mandelas were respected in their community. They lived a simple but peaceful life. Mandela grew up in the village of Kunu, where he played with other boys, ran through the fields, herded animals, and swam in the river. Life was full of joy, games, and traditional ceremonies. He often listened to the elders as they told stories around the fire, stories about brave warriors, proud kings, and the fight to protect their people. These stories shaped young Mandela's dreams. He started to imagine a better world. He wanted to help people, to be strong, and to make a difference. Everything changed when Mandela was 9 years old. His father became very ill and passed away. This was a great loss for young Nelson. His mother decided to send him to live with Chief Jongintaba Delingabo, the acting regent of the Dembu people. Jongintaba had promised Mandela's father that he would take care of his son if anything ever happened to him. Mandela moved to the royal palace in because when he there, his life changed completely. He now wore fine clothes, ate better food, and attended important meetings with village leaders. He learned how leaders made decisions, how they listened to others, and how they ruled with respect. Mandela was quiet but observant. He paid close attention to everything. He learned about fairness, tradition, and the importance of serving others. The chief treated Mandela like a son and gave him a good education. Mandela began to understand the meaning of leadership. It wasn't about power, it was about service. His father had once told him, a real leader is not someone who wants power for himself, but someone who serves his people. These words stayed in Mandela's heart forever. Mandela began school when he was 7. He attended a local missionary school where he was taught by Christian teachers. It was at this school that he received the name Nelson. The teacher could not pronounce Rolihlahla, and like many African children at the time, he was given an English name. Mandela never liked the fact that he had to change his name, but he accepted it and focused on his studies. He was a bright student who enjoyed reading and learning new things. He especially loved history and English literature. He read stories of great leaders, battles, and revolutions. He started to wonder why his own people were treated as less important in their own country. Mandela continued his education at Healthtown, a respected boarding school for black students. There he learned discipline and the value of hard work. Later he attended Fort Hare University, the best university for black students in South Africa at the time. At Fort Hare, Mandela studied English, politics, and law. He also joined the Student Council. It was the first time he began to speak out about fairness and justice. When students protested against school rules, Mandela supported them and refused to back down. As a result, he was suspended from the university. This was Mandela's first act of resistance, but it would not be his last. When he returned home, Chief Jongintaba was very angry. To calm things down, he arranged a marriage for Mandela, hoping that he would settle down and live a traditional life. But Mandela had different dreams. He wanted freedom not just for himself, but for all his people. He decided to run away. Along with his cousin Justice, he traveled to Johannesburg, South Africa's largest city. Arriving in Johannesburg was both exciting and terrifying. The city was fast, noisy, and full of life. Mandela saw something he had never seen so clearly before: racial segregation. Black people were poor and had to live in crowded neighborhoods called townships. They had to carry special papers to move around. They could not vote. They were not allowed to go to the same schools, hospitals, or parks as white people. The system was called apartheid. It was cruel and unfair, and Mandela knew something had to be done that first. Life in Johannesburg was hard. Mandela worked as a security guard and later found a job as a law clerk. He earned very little money and lived in a small room in a crowded area, but he never gave up on learning. He studied at night and read every book he could find. He enrolled at the University of Witwatersrand to study law. He was one of the few black students at the university. Many of the white students treated him badly, but he did not let their hatred break him. He knew education was his path to power and change. While Studying, Mandela met other young men and women who wanted to fight injustice. He joined the African National Congress, also known as the ANC. The ANC was a group that wanted to win equal rights for black South Africans. Mandela believed the ANC needed new energy and new ideas. Together with others, he helped create the ANC Youth League. They believed in peaceful protest, but they also believed in strong action. Mandela became a rising leader. He gave speeches, organized meetings, and inspired people with his courage and passion. In 1944, Mandela married Evelyn Mays, a nurse who shared his dreams. They had children and built a home together. But Mandela was always busy with his political work. His family life suffered. He loved his children, but the fight for freedom took most of his time. He once said, "There is no passion to be found in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living." Mandela knew his work was risky. Many people warned him to stop, but he couldn't stop. He had seen too much pain, too much injustice, and he knew that someone had to stand up and say, enough. In 1948, the government of South Africa officially introduced apartheid. New laws made life even harder for black people. They could no longer live in certain areas, travel freely, or attend good schools. Families were separated. People were arrested for small reasons. The system was cruel and inhuman. Mandela and the ANC decided to fight back. They organized peaceful protests, marches, and strikes. They asked people to stop buying from white businesses and to refuse to obey unfair laws. Thousands joined them. The movement was growing. The government saw Mandela as a threat. He was arrested many times, but every time he came out, he stood stronger. He believed in justice, and he believed in non-violence. He was inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, who had used peaceful resistance in India. Mandela said, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." These were not just words. Mandela knew the risks, but in 1952, Mandela opened South Africa's first black law firm with his friend Oliver Tambo. They called it Mandela and Tambo Attorneys. Their office was always full. Poor people came for help. They were being forced from their homes, treated badly by employers, or arrested for no reason. Mandela helped them all. He believed that the law should protect everyone, not just the powerful. He worked hard every day and gave hope to those who had none. But the government did not stop. In fact, it got worse. Police began arresting more people. The leaders of the ANC were watched, followed, and threatened. Mandela was banned from speaking in public or attending meetings, yet he found ways to keep working. He traveled in secret, used code names, and met with leaders underground. The freedom movement was growing, but so was the danger. Still, Mandela never lost hope. He said, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." Mandela knew that true change required sacrifice. He was ready to give everything, even his life, for the dream of a free and equal South Africa. In 1960, a tragic event changed the course of Mandela's life. During a peaceful protest in the town of Sharpeville, police opened fire on the crowd, killing 69 people and injuring hundreds more. This massacre shocked the world and made Mandela realize that peaceful protests alone might not be enough. The government banned the ANC, forcing Mandela and other leaders to go underground. They formed a secret armed group called Mkanto, which means Spear of the Nation. Mandela said their goal was not to harm people but to sabotage government structures that upheld apartheid. Nelson Mandela became a wanted man. He traveled across South Africa in disguise, organizing protests and recruiting people for the struggle. He also traveled to other countries to gain support for the fight against apartheid. During this time, Mandela became known as the Black Pimpernel because he was so good at evading capture, but his life was full of There, he spent 18 of his 27 years in prison. The conditions were harsh. He lived in a tiny cell, just 2.4 meters by 2.1 meters, about the size of a walk-in closet, with no bed, just a thin mat on the floor. He had one small bucket for a toilet. He was only allowed one visitor and one letter every 6 months. The food was poor, and the work was exhausting. Every day, Mandela and other prisoners were taken to a limestone quarry where they were forced to dig rocks under the hot, blinding sun. The glare from the white stones permanently damaged Mandela's eyesight, but even behind bars, Mandela refused to be broken. He used his time in prison to reflect, to read, and to learn. He read books on law, philosophy, and history. He secretly wrote letters, mentored younger prisoners, and continued his fight for justice in any way he could. He studied Afrikaans, the language of the oppressors, to better understand their minds. He taught lessons in leadership, discipline, and forgiveness. Prison became his classroom. As he later said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. He organized secret study groups, and even taught fellow prisoners how to speak publicly and argue respectfully. He believed that when freedom came, they would need to be ready to lead with wisdom and unity. Over time, Mandela became more than just a prisoner. He became a global symbol of resistance. Around the world, people began chanting his name. Free Nelson Mandela. Protests broke out in cities across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. People marched in the streets, held candlelight vigils, and sang protest songs. Musicians like Stevie Wonder, U2, and Bob Marley wrote songs in his honor. Governments around the world placed sanctions on South Africa, demanding the end of apartheid and Mandela's release. Inside South Africa, the fight continued. The people grew bolder, stronger, more determined. The government tried to silence Mandela, but the more they tried to hide him, the louder his voice became. His wife, Winnie Mandela, spoke on his behalf, carrying his message into the world. Children in South African schools whispered his name with pride. Mandela's prison number 46,664 became a rallying cry for justice. Despite the cruelty and suffering he endured, Mandela never allowed bitterness to consume him. He said, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison." This mindset kept his spirit strong even when hope seemed far away. After nearly 3 decades behind bars, Mandela was finally released on February 11, 1990. The world watched in awe as he walked out of Victor Verster prison. Tall, composed, and full of grace. He was now 71 years old. His hair had turned gray, but his determination remained fierce. Crowds lined the streets. People wept with joy. South Africa had waited for this moment for generations. In his first speech after being freed, Mandela said, "I stand here before you, not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people. Let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all." He could have called for revenge, but he didn't. He called for reconciliation and unity. The years that followed were difficult. South Africa was on the edge of chaos. Racial tensions ran high. Violence erupted in some communities. But Mandela remained a calming voice. He met with leaders of the very government that had imprisoned him. He believed that only through dialogue, respect, and forgiveness could the nation be healed. Mandela resumed his leadership role in the ANC and began working on a peaceful transition to democracy. It wasn't easy. There were betrayals, delays, and political games. Some people on both sides wanted war. But Mandela never lost sight of the goal of South Africa, where everyone had equal rights, regardless of the color of their skin. In 1994, that dream finally came true. For the first time in South Africa's history, people of all races could vote in a democratic election. Voters stood in lines for hours, many of them elderly people who had waited their whole lives for this moment. On April 27, 1994, Nelson Mandela was elected president of South Africa. It was a victory not just for one man, but for an entire nation. Mandela's inauguration was a celebration of freedom, dignity, and hope. Leaders from all over the world gathered in Pretoria to witness the event. In his speech, Mandela said, "Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another." As President Mandela worked to unite a divided nation, he promoted forgiveness over revenge. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to help the country heal from the wounds of apartheid. Victims and perpetrators were invited to speak honestly about the past. It was painful, but it was necessary. Mandela believed that courageous people do not fear forgiving for the sake of peace. One of Mandela's most symbolic acts of unity came during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. Rugby had long been seen as a sport for white South Africans, but Mandela wore the green jersey of the national team. The Springboks and stood beside them as they played. When South Africa won, the entire stadium, black and white alike, erupted in cheers. It was a powerful moment of national healing. Later captured in the film, Invictus, Mandela only served 1 term as president. He chose to step down in 1999, proving that true leaders know when to let go of power. In his retirement, Mandela continued to fight not with speeches or protests but through his foundation. He championed causes such as education, peace, and the battle against HIV/AIDS. He traveled the world inspiring millions, always reminding people of the power of forgiveness, compassion, and courage. On December 5, 2013, Nelson Mandela passed away at the age of 95. The world mourned. Presidents, kings, celebrities, and ordinary people gathered to pay their respects. But even as they wept, they also celebrated. Mandela's life had changed the world. His legacy continues. Schools are named after him. Statues of his likeness stand in cities across the globe. The United Nations declared July 18 his birthday as Nelson Mandela International Day, encouraging people everywhere to dedicate 67 minutes to helping others. 1 minute for each year Mandela served the public. Mandela's life teaches us many lessons, that change is possible, even in the darkest times, that one person's courage can inspire a nation, that the path to justice is long and full of pain but also full of hope. He once said, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." His story reminds us that falling is not failing. What matters is that we rise, again and again. No matter where you come from, no matter how difficult your journey, you can make a difference. Like Mandela, you can rise above fear. You can choose love over hate. You can choose peace over violence. You can choose hope. This is not just the story of Nelson Mandela. This is the story of humanity's potential. And now, the next chapter is yours to write. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey. If this story inspired you, please share it with someone else. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that change hearts and minds. Together, we can build a world that honors Mandela's legacy one step, one voice, and one dream at a time.